Testing, testing, 1, 2. Testing, testing, 1, 2. Testing, testing. 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 Testing.
Morning.
Hello, everyone. Hi, welcome. I invite you to join us. Our wonderful designers, mentees, mentors, critics, invited guest critics, please take a seat.歡迎你哋坐低，唔該。早晨。Wow, thank you. I'm so excited, actually, I have to say, on a Saturday morning, getting such an illustrious group of people together. Okay. So good morning. Thank you so much. A little bit about this program and also our initiative. Design Trust is a nonprofit organization here in Hong Kong. I'm very lucky to be partnering with so many wonderful individuals and collaborators to produce this event today, and also this, I would say, very special program from our organization. Design Trust Future Studio is actually a pilot program to explore and experiment with new, and I would say also old ideas, and find ways to exchange and also reflect upon our city and how the individual in our city can work collectively to produce, I would say, new ways of production. I think for a year now, I have to say this program has taken a while to develop, both on a personal but also a professional level, and to find ways to discover absence and create much more energy within that moment of absence in Hong Kong. And we can discuss a little bit what that means. And I want to actually share a little bit about the agenda. There are multiple agendas to this program and multiple desires. One thing is also to highlight the role of design in the production of a city. There's the kind of positivity aspects that we can intervene and integrate. Also think about the role of architects and design. We're often in constraints. We're given design briefs. And so the program itself is quite organic and free. We didn't want to limit or express too much constraints within the project itself. So that's also a way to think about how we develop this program. The Future Studios is also what I'm calling, in a simple sense, a mentor-mentee think tank lab that creates immediacy of the role of, say, I would say a hierarchy. But no, it's not really about a hierarchical way of working. It's really about a process of collaboration, to the point where I hope the mentors might actually become mentees, and maybe the emerging designer mentees can actually eventually mentor a process and change something in our city. What Design Trust does is also bring different stakeholders together, and therefore today I'm very excited to bridge, I would say, young design community to emerging experts, to the representation of government, policymakers, to more grassroots participants, all in this setting today. So it's also very, very exciting to build up this conversation. Before I go too much into detail, I have to thank everyone, and also with complete gratitude, my board at Design Trust and Hong Kong Ambassador Design, celebrating our 10-year anniversary. The Design Trust initiative was started in 2014 primarily as a grant-giving platform to support research and design scholarship, I would say, that is often not in the academic or professional setting. And I want to also thank the Create Hong Kong for supporting this initiative as a major sponsor for this event. And of course, Spring Workshop, this wonderful independent nonprofit organization is supporting us with many workshops and spaces and residencies. So thank you to Mimi Brown, who will be joining us very soon. And also to then extend the conversation, one reason why we could do this is also the partnership with Storefront for Art and Architecture, which is, I would say, one of the most incredible independent leading, well, I wouldn't say it's an institution, it's an agitator and an agency in making change in the society in New York and expanding different territories. And so the theme today, although it's smallness is meaningful, my question this morning is smallness actually maybe could be more powerful than gigantism. An example of this is prevalent in the smallness studio concept that we're developing, the incredible power of the independence of certain institutions in relationship to each other. So very quickly, I just wanted to give you a few hints of why we're here and what we're doing today. We're focusing on smallness and sharing and looking at the issues of micro-housing. But eventually, the groups today will be presenting ideas and prototypes and concepts towards a new future micropark for Hong Kong. What does this mean? So we will explore that. Again, it's a collaborative process that is multidisciplinary. We've had an incredible group of mentors who agreed to join us on this journey this year, starting in March. We have Stanley Wong here in the front row, who is one of our mentors, inaugural Hong Kong-based mentor, and lends his expertise in a different way of looking at what design is today. We also have Gary Chang, who will be joining us soon. And Gary is also an expert in, I would say, micro apartments with his very famous domestic transformer. He's been living there for the last 40 years, 32 square meter apartment. We have Mimi Huang and Sam Jacob, New York and London based, who also will be focusing and leading their teams. Mimi Huang is also working on a micro-unit apartment, which is ironic since Bloomberg had said a micro-unit in Hong Kong is about 2/5 of the size of a micro-unit in New York. So there's some really interesting relationships about definition. And Sam Jacob has been leading sketching workshops with a team to allow us a moment to reflect and draw and think about our role as designers and architects. And finally, we have a international workshop mentor who's been coming in and out to lead the conversation and team, and that's Elizabeth Diller, who's lending her time to volunteer and support the team through Skype workshops. I will let the teams explain and introduce themselves. We have other advisors like Ava Franch from New York, Carlos, who is here with us today, Alita Lam, advisor from the Fashion Textiles, Francis Nye, who's Social Ventures Group, Ricky Yu, who was also an innovator in social housing, and also Ada Wong, who will also be joining us. And the wonderful designers, I would say, is the core of this project. They've been nominated through an advisory group of different deans of schools, academics, and finally nominated and selected by a jury. They come from different backgrounds, 10 years out of school, and my goal was to mix and match different disciplines. So we have not only graphic designers, landscape architects, to urbanists, a graphic designer, typography, even a writer and critic, to a candle maker, and also a branding expert and a technology and virtual reality club leader from Shenzhen is also one of our participants. This is the process. We're at the midpoint. So to explain the process, we've just put the teams together. So it's a hopefully a match made in heaven or a match made in debate and discussion. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what they're producing today. The process has been a lot of introduction workshops, get to know each other. And we have just put the teams together for about a month and a half now, and I'll explain the groups afterwards. So today is the midpoint. We will be, after today, with your responses, your encouragement, your criticism, your critiques, your support, the teams will focus their work into presenting it to the public in an exhibition format in October. I'm still trying to look for space, so the developers that are here today, please note, we're looking for some great pop-up spaces, and we're trying to empower some developers to come on board to actually produce these physical prototypes in the next round. These are just workshops. We visited Gary Chang's home, Xavier sketching away, following Stanley Wong's 3 case studies of what he thinks public parks are in Hong Kong. And enjoying the heat and rain, Liz Diller's workshops, more spring workshop projects, Sam Jacob drawing, and they were challenged by Sam Jacob to select a hardware store to draw in Hong Kong, Ng Kam Po, and study the issues of smallness and compactness, and really study the spatial aspects. And Mimi Huang has been pushing a few people to really build a future prototype very quickly as an agency, and other designers and involvement in this process. And our last workshop was with Ada Wong at Good Lab in Chanshawan, which was also very exciting to partner with a different group of community looking at design and parks that are not from a design expertise perspective, but from a citizen's perspective. So that also lends itself another way to look at bottom-up strategies. These are the teams. I will let each team introduce themselves carefully, but I do want to introduce our critics very quickly, the illustrious community with us today. James Acuna, JJ, is a designer here. Ethel Barona, who's flying in from Barcelona. Arnaud Castel, founder of Kapok. We have James Chamber from Monaco. Donald Choi, a developer and a key, I would say, instigator in these discussions in Hong Kong. Ava Franch, I hope, is watching simultaneously in New York. Patrick Huang from Chinese University. Tat Lam lends his expertise from Shenzhen in Hong Kong. William Lane, a perspective from the performance aspect. Leslie Lau, thank you, from LCSD, Art Promotion Office, who's also championing a lot of these similar questions. Leslie Liu will join us afterwards. Carlos, I will introduce you properly. Duncan Pescott, the Chief Executive of West Kowloon Cultural Authority, who also was leading the Housing Authority for many, many years. Sahanya, thank you for joining us from M+. I'm very excited to have you contribute and participate, and she already has some ideas about smallness, so I can't wait to hear that. Cole Roskam and Eric Schoenfrey, professors from the University of Hong Kong, and Ada Wong will join us. Sarah Wong should be here, a founding member of Parasite, another independent studio, and Parasite, another independent art space, and also a landscape architect. And finally, Eric Yim, a big proponent for the design community here, running the Hong Kong Design Center as a chairman, and also a professor of practice and product design. So this is our community, and I would like to introduce Carlos to share a little bit about Storefront, and then we can kick off. Thank you so much.
All right. Welcome everybody to the design studios. My name is Carlos Mínguez Carrasco. I'm the associate curator of Storefront for Art and Architecture, and we are very excited to be here in partnership with Design Trust in the second day of Storefront International Series Hong Kong. Storefront for Art and Architecture, for those who don't know us, we are a non-profit organization based in New York. We are this year in our 35th anniversary. The organization was founded by Keon Park in 1982, and we're an organization that works in the realm of art and architecture, always trying to advance critical and radical ideas for the discussion of what is our built environment, our cities, our territories, our public life. So our different programming, we do a lot of programming. We do from exhibitions to publications to events to projects, always tries to construct like alternative platforms for discussion and collaboration across disciplines, across generations, and across ideologies. Our programming goes from like the most alternative TV program in the basement of our gallery to being, for example, the US, the curators of the US Pavilion in the Venice Biennale in 2014. And one of those projects, one of those programmings, it's what we call the Starfront International Series, that has the intention to, well, always collaborate with a local institution and translate some of the experimental formats that we develop in our gallery and bring them to a specific city in order to scan what are the most relevant, most important and contested issues of each of the cities that we visit, bringing some collaborators with us and asking local experts to join also in the conversation, and trying to, well, to develop some of those conversations in order, of course, to produce some action and some response and some agency. Always with the belief that architecture has, and the architects have an important role in the construction of our cities. We started the Starfront International Series in Dominican Republic, and the idea always of those conversations is that they don't happen always in a closed room. They happen also in front of the issues that we are talking about, right? So that's why in Dominican Republic we also talked about questions of boundaries. Actually, that's something that we have discussed here as well. We were also in Portugal, in Lisbon, also occupying some of the main squares of the city. And we are here doing a Starfront International Series Hong Kong. I want to thank Design Trust for the partnership that we have developed in the last year that has been incredible and has made the whole thing possible. I also want to thank Spring Workshop for hosting some of us, including me. I'm living in one of the studios here, and it's an amazing space and a nice venue for the discussion that we're going to have today. And I invite you all to come to the different events that we are going to have until tomorrow in the afternoon. You can check the whole programming in the newsprint that you have in your seat. But we were yesterday on top of a ferry crossing to mainland China, discussing questions of borders and border conditions. We were yesterday night cooking a paella and discussing questions of sharing at the same time that we were drinking and eating. And today we're going to be doing a definition series and a manifesto series, right? And what is that? Well, that comes back to what I was talking about, the formats that we develop at the gallery. And we always, in these kind of formats, we ask the participants, in this case, the different teams that are going to be presenting their projects, we have asked them to frame their presentations into a definition, right? What is smallness? What is a scale? The idea today is that they are going to be presenting their project at the same time that they are constructing these definitions. These definitions is part of a very, very long-term project from Starfront, in which basically we are condensing all the definitions of different terms in order to construct a dictionary of contemporary issues. So again, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for all the different teams, but also the guest critics and the mentees and the mentors to be all here. We are very excited for the event today. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we will start with a very fun format. And I would like to introduce the first team. So Gary Chang is the mentor for this group. Zoe, Dick Wai Lai, and also Jose. So maybe you can share just one sentence each about who you are, your team. We will be timing this with a 10-minute presentation. We'll have a short little exchange, and then we'll bring on the next group to have their next group presentation. And then continue for the 4 teams. Okay, so come guys, you ready? Yeah.
So, hi everyone, this is Zoe. I just graduated from University of Hong Kong, Master of Architecture 2 years ago, and now working in a local practice. And this is Jose.
Hi everyone, I'm Jose. I graduated from Shenzhen University, and I come from Shenzhen, and actually I'm not a designer. I'm we are expert for visual reality, and it's my very honor to be here and have exchange idea with everyone. So thank you.
So it's a bit nervous to start off in the morning. What is smallness? We have our own definition throughout the investigation and also related to our proposals. So if translate to Chinese, we translate the smallness into mei, that we will explain later. And it means it is about limited space, even no space. People cannot notice something that you can see it everywhere, but you do not question about it. And people do not care, or maybe it is significant. So this is the Chinese definition of mei. It is actually meaning something hidden. While the Chinese character is separate the character of walking, and a man walking in between is like hiding from the surroundings. So, but it also means comprehensive or no, non-negative. And if you quantify, it's actually meaning 1/100. So how do we deal with smallness? We are having execution with removable, portable, transformable design methods to create more or unlimited space. So even smallness, when you view it as one, it might be small, but when you have a chain effect of everything, it becomes part of the city and it creates ripple effect. So that small can be big. So this is the definition of park. And here comes to our idea related to smallness. It's actually part and park of the city. So we are extracting an everyday elements. This is some insight. Everyone knows Hong Kong is very small and lacking of public space. And even our resting space, because this is the bus driver that does not have he feels like sleeping on a railing is more comfortable than, or more, maybe more enjoyable than in a very enclosed bus station or some workers' room. So this is our proposal about the railings, that you may come across it every day while you are walking here, but you seldom question it. So this is actually downstairs. While you are coming across, you can see there are a lot of standard railings, some water-filled railings, some concrete, some balustrade, and they serve different purpose. And I think this is a great potential to modify it, make use of it, or even adopt it, that we are sharing it later. And this is very small in the city, but with the cumulative effect, this may change the whole city images. So one of the ways is we are upcycling the materials from the Q Park in Hong Kong. And also for the railing park system will be based on three categories: the geographic categories, demographic category, and eco-friendly. And we have some target users, but for section 1, I think this is just about smallness. So we will discuss and analyze different railings in Hong Kong that we see every day, and also research and analyze the potential users' needs, and also design a park system with number of parks of the city. So do you have anything to supplement?
No.
Okay, so thank you.
So maybe we can invite the second group, because I think it'll be good to contrast the discussion. Thank you. So Mimi Huang and her team, Fion Zhang, Stephen Ip, and Cesar. Please.
Thank you, Marisa. I'm Stephen Ip, and my teammate Fion and Cesar, unfortunately, they cannot make it today, so I'll present what we think about smallness. So, smallness, and the problem of smallness in Hong Kong is a very hot topic, and this is a newest residential development that was put onto the market at the end of last year, and they are selling flats that is only 128 square feet in size, which is like the smallest we can get in recent times, and it stirred up a lot of criticism within the society. And how small is 128 square feet? It is smaller than a car park lot. A car park lot is around 135 square feet. So the journalists went to a car park lot and mapped out the size of that residential flat. They put in a toilet, they put in a pantry, and they put in a bed. And there is almost no space that you can use at all. So the widespread criticism is on the smallness of the residential units we have in Hong Kong, and saying this is inhuman, this is outrageous. But is it really so small? And does it mean that the small space must be a mediocre space? Does it mean that we have to go back to the living standards of the 60s in Hong Kong, where basically a family is just sharing a bed and a sink and a small fridge, and everything has to happen on the bed and the floor? So many architects and designers have looked into small flats, and of course one of our mentors, Gary Chang, is the expert, as explained by Marisa earlier. And so is smallness necessary evil? Can design transform this smallness into something meaningful and interesting? So we went to Gary's home back in, I think it was in April. And there were like 10 of us with Gary, and we did a lot of things within that space. It is a transformable space. It's an interesting experience. The space keeps changing. It can be a bedroom, it can be a living room, it can be a study room, it can be a theater. And none of us feel it is small at all, although we have like 10 people in it. And it is constantly changing. And I guess this is one of the solutions to smallness. It is transformable, it is temporal, it makes use of shared space, and it has its instant property, and it's mobile. So it is ever-changing, and you don't feel it small because as a human, all you need is the space around you. And if the functions around you keeps changing, you are using the same space for a lot of things. So I think that's the key approach to deal with the problem of smallness in Hong Kong. And for our ongoing micropark design, we want to achieve the same effect with very small objects, and that works in Hong Kong meaningfully. So this is one of the streets in Hong Kong. It is so dense, a lot of things are happening. How can you even insert the tiniest park into this space? So what kind of device can we achieve these four properties? How can it be transformable? How can it be temporal? Can it just exist and vanish easily? I'm thinking of, we are thinking as a group of using this kind of skips to be the vehicle of the park, the micro park. What fascinated me is that these skips exist in Hong Kong already. It is on our street. There are like 3,500 of them on the street, but we don't even notice it. We don't even complain. We don't even we don't even feel it when we walk past it. Somehow it is one of the elements in our street in Hong Kong already. So can this be a park? Can this be the temporal park that we use as a device to put in our city? And I think this skip has all these properties. So on a busy street like this, we can always put in a skip when we need a park. We may even dial a park. Okay, I want a park, please send me a park, just like Uber. So maybe that's the direction to go. And I think about smallness, it is like acupuncture. The needle is one of the very tiniest, smallest thing. And you can insert into your body without damaging your fabric, your organism. And when you pull out the needle, your body just seal the gap and return to its previous state. So somehow I think this micropart, this skip, carries the same function as the needle in acupuncture. You insert it into the city when you need it, and you can take it out when the function is over. So even if it is very small, the needle is very small, but if you put it in as a network, it has the ripple effect and creates a dynamic effect over your body. So what if our micropark, the very small microparks, act as a needle on your body? The city is our body, and we put in like 20 of it all the way from Sham Shui Po to Tsim Sha Tsui and create a network. So it can be something small and meaningful. That's it. Thank you.
Actually, it reminds me, I do want to read this quote from Liz Diller, who actually gave us a really awesome workshop, maybe subtly influencing the first two groups. She says, protecting public space is one of the most important things that architects should and could be involved in, because space is being progressively privatized, and it's very important to have these spaces of release where there is a public interest at stake. We need to be vigilant about this. I'm really glad you're doing what you're doing, because maybe if we can't make another Central Park, we can make 100 micro parks. So that's also another food for thought, really interesting relationship between her experience in New York and also the potential of what Hong Kong can do. I think maybe this is the energy is good, the momentum is good. Maybe we can keep going with the third group. Stanley Wong's team, Samuel Wong, Vivian Ng, and Sylvia Chan. And if you want to actually introduce yourself a little bit, I think it's nice, yeah.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Chan. I'm now doing my PhD in histories and theories in Hong Kong. I'm also a writer.
Hi, my name is Samuel Wong. I graduated from Chinese University of Hong Kong from the Master of Architecture, and I'm currently working at Rock Design Architect.
Hi, I'm Vivian Ng, and I just graduated from Hong Kong Polytechnic University as a product designer, and I'm practice in a local firm.
So we'll start. So our mentor is Stanley Wong. So, so today we're just here to share with you our understanding of smallness. So first, I think we would like to put things a bit in context. So here you see we've done some research about the area of public open space in Hong Kong. So it's like around 30 square feet, which translates as around 2.5 yoga mats, which is quite small. And we'll go into our own definition about smallness. So to us, smallness has 3 layers of meanings. So this is the first layer. It's related to scale. So smallness, apparently, it means small in scale, but it is a relative concept. So different of us would have very different perceptions about what is big and what is small. And then the second layer of meaning, so we understand it as the starting point of a journey of discovery. So here we mean that, so for example here, if we look at a bunch of rows and we just keep looking into it closely, and maybe eventually we would think about Rothko. So in this case, for us, smallness is actually this bunch of rows, and it has nothing to do with size, which was in the previous layer of meaning of smallness that we were talking about. And then the third layer of meaning, it means everything insignificant in life, and this is the layer of meaning that we would like to focus on in our micropark design. And so here we understand smallness as everything we perceive as insignificant in life, like what you see here, a shadow or just some water. These are things that you don't normally notice. And so here we ask, do these small or insignificant things not have any value? Is there a possibility that in an insignificant moment, we realize something much bigger, perhaps something related to the meaning of life? So here we include a quote from our mentor, Stanley, which is in Chinese, but it vaguely translates as, life is not about making a living, but it's also about living. So how do we make people think about questions such as this? How do we make them notice something small and insignificant around them? So this question, I think, is especially relevant to Hong Kong because we Hong Kong people, we tend to be very goal-oriented in our career or in our relationship. So we always ignore the small things around us. So how does this relate to our micropark?
In a metropolis city like Hong Kong, our living is not only restricted by the limited physical spaces that we have, but the definition about our definition of living is also very limited. And in this highly efficient city, where things is defined by productivity of time, we actually never have takes time to look at to be less efficient and take time to look at our cities. When we pass by the city, we only focus on what's happening in and around our eyesight, but we actually never looks up to the buildings or look down and slow down to actually focus on the smaller things, the insignificant things that happenings in the cities. And the act of microparks actually originate from the act of trying to ask people to slow down, trying to take a closer look at the cities, focusing on the insignificant things. And we ask them to take a break and to live for the moment and to focus on the people, the things and stories around us. And we try to start by asking questions. What's the last time you actually look up at the sky and see the clouds? Does it look like a bear? Does it look like dragons? And when was the last time you actually have lunch without looking at your phone? And when was the last time you're listening to the bird sings? And when was the last time you appreciate a moment of taking a rest? And when was the last time you smelled roses? And when you actually start to slow down, you will notice things that you don't normally notice that is happening in the cities. For example, there's like a plants growing on the surface of the wall up in the 5th floors.
So have you ever have a moment, relax and enjoy your coffee when even everyone around you rush in a hurry? And do you still remember that feeling, and can you record it now? Actually, in everyday Hong Kong nowadays, we are so focused on what we are doing, and we are so focused on the task and the problem we need to solve every day. And we even very often forgot the people going around because we think they are irrelevant to us, and we didn't put any time to recognize what they are doing or even respect what they are doing. Here are some very, here are the business sports in Hong Kong that people are so focused on their work and they are talking about efficiency in their lives. But what we take this opportunity of Michael Park this time is we really want to have something to let the people to stop and then enjoy the space around them and then discover the insignificant moment, insignificant object, or insignificant things happen around them. And then we hope to inspire them to realize the beauty of their lives and also the life's magnificence. So we are not only talking about the scale, about smallness. Smallness is something more meaningful to us, and then we really hope to inspire every person by their mind. It's like if we change each person's mind about how they think about smallness, and then it's like it can affect the whole society, and it really can achieve the statement of smallness is really meaningful and powerful. So we will focus on the idea of smallness is the insignificant things in our lives for designing our micro parts in part 2. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I actually would love a coffee and watch time go by. That was fabulous. So maybe the last group. Would you like to join us? This is Sam Jacobs' team. Sam is actually in London, and I would say he has probably the most challenging mentorship right now. And Xavier's connecting and holding on to everyone because we have Ricky, who just won a fellowship. So he's based in London. We have Wendy, who's based in Shenzhen, and Xavier is Hong Kong. So welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Wendy. I work in Shenzhen. I'm an architect and urban designer. I work in Urbanus, a local firm in Shenzhen. And also this year, I work in the research department. And this year, I'm the assistant curator of the Shenzhen Hong Kong Architecture Biennale.
Hi, I'm Xavier. I'm product designer and candle and fragrance artisan. I'm also founder of the brand Be Candle and Moon Laboratory. And we have another guy, Ricky Lai, who's now based in London, who's a new multimedia designer, musician, and also a curator. So I'll pass the mic to Wendy to start.
So as Xavier just said, he designed candles. So what can be smaller than that? Our teammate Ricky, who found this called Open Quad. It's a community art center. So he's more involved in making of community center using the media of art. And I am urban designer, so I work in urban scale. So this is the 3 scale we coming from, very different background. So as said, I am from Shenzhen, and now this is the picture of Shenzhen, the grand Shenzhen Avenue, big, but also has less things, I think. And then this is Hong Kong, very small. Everybody knows Hong Kong is very small, but somehow it's richer, as you see in this image. It has so many elements, so much energy and power. So one of the spirit of Hong Kong is the smallness here has the spirit of creating something new and has more possibilities. And very often it's starting from something very small as like a bacteria. But these species, it has the capacity of making a change starting from a mutation. And later it becomes evolution. Then this evolution, the power of evolution, it creates this growth. It will grow into something bigger, and the changes it made will create maybe a new social ecology, a new ecology. It might happen in a minute, a small minute of time in your life, a moment. But that moment, sometimes it creates a scenery, a moment of scenery. And those little pieces will become something big. And these pieces of scenery will create a bigger picture of a beautiful scenery. So when we get back to the scenario of Hong Kong, we think because it has all the power of possibilities, and we would like to put our design into a future scenario, which is about the city of Hong Kong. Because it's a free market here, it has all the power of entrepreneurship. And what if in this city we can provide a new strategy towards making use of a new way of using the land here, as the land resource is very precious here in Hong Kong. So the population in Hong Kong or in PRD is growing very fast. The migration of immigrants comes here, and it needs more resource of housing, public space, and all other things. What if we can provide a strategy that you don't really need so much resource, for example, the land resource, but you can create a park?
So this is our background is our fictional imaginary future of Hong Kong, where there isn't any single piece of green park in the urban area. So despite there are still 3/4 of green area outside Hong Kong, but people living inside this very stressful city are still yearning for a park at a walking distance from their home. So we have thought about a kind of park delivery system called Mobile Park. And we have taken inspiration from Deliveroo, Uber, and also Freetown Christiania, which is an autonomous region in Copenhagen where they have their own rules, and the public can even contribute money and own a share of the region. So how is our park delivery system like? It consists of modules of different parks. And you can see there are different facilities and landscape and different kind of trees. And then people can choose their truck, small truck, the closed truck or open truck to deliver their park. And also ambient system where they can control the ambient light, temperature, sound of the park, which is like a backdrop. So everything is like a science fiction. We're making a science fiction because we are doing for Future Studio. And everything is like Uber. There's you can order the delivery with a app, so you can choose the previous things I've mentioned. So it is like the Freetown Christiania, which is a heterotopia in the city, but this is Heterotopia connected by the network. So all the park modules is stored and digitally fabricated in the mobile park. And once there's order for delivery, it automatically install into the truck and move to the road under your home. So we didn't want to create a paid park. So we have to think about a system where everyone can enjoy and own the park, just like the Freetown Christiania. So it will be run under as a social enterprise, more specifically as a non-profit cooperative, where people can crowdfund for the whole system and crowdfund. Even the design of the park modules is open. People can propose the design and crowdfund to fabricate the park modules. And then the park will be can be delivered at an affordable price, and all the costs will go back to the enterprise. And the park can be just a single park, a small park, a very enclosed park. Even the ambience module inside the car can be a synchronized device to synchronize with another park, like even a park in London. So you can just use the park, but see the image and hear the sounds of the park in London. And it can also be combined as a bigger park, like this image. So yeah, that's what we're going to share. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that the best way to continue the conversation is that if we really like change the organization of the room, because we would like to have a kind of a general conversation with everybody, like reflecting on the different teams. So I will ask everybody that is sitting to stand up, get their chair, and turn it in order to produce kind of a circle, or maybe facing those two sides. But we're going to change the configuration of the room so we can have a more fluid conversation. Okay, thank you. Doesn't need to be a complete circle, but the scatter. All right, good. Don't go to the limits. Let's occupy the center as well. I know, no, but come here, closer to the center, Yes, exactly. Let's not go far away. All right, that's good. Okay, cool. And please, sit in the first line of the circle, not in the second, not in the third. Exactly, that's good. That's better. All right. Now we can see each other. Okay, so let's start the conversation about smallness. I mean, well, let's continue it, let's say. I feel, what we can start with is to start looking at what has happened, right? Like, what are the four approaches that we have seen, and what can that mean for the discussion about the smallness? I was like kind of doing like a kind of a recap of the four approaches to smallness, and of course that's my personal approach. So I would like also to test it out with you all. But I was thinking that the first project was thinking about the smallness as something that is banal, that is insignificant, right? That it's like kind of not really reachable in the city. So the potential of insignificance, I think, is an interesting approach. The second one was smallness as a scalable, that I thought that was very interesting. Not the idea of how the importance of how to scale up certain projects, right? Certain ideas that might be operative in a specific neighborhood, but are able to be scaled up towards the city. The third approach was the idea of smallness as instantaneous, something that is like instead of a space that I thought that was actually very potential as well. The idea of that the smallness actually is a feeling, is a status. Is an ephemeral space of time. That actually I thought that was very provocative as well. And the fourth one would be smallness as a system, right? It is a system that actually doesn't have a specific shape, but it's movable, it's mutable, it's capable to get certain shapes. So it's like the capability of being a system as something that it's potential. So like thinking about those 4 approaches that I think that were like very provocative, and I really like the 4 approaches, I would like to open up the conversation to the different guest critics, but also to everybody that is here to at least respond to those 4 approaches I had that are meant to be polemic, and seeing which ones are a little bit more connected to what can happen today in Hong Kong, right? Because there were like a lot of ideas of what is the future of Hong Kong that I have the feeling, I'm not local, so I don't know exactly, but I have the feeling that are actually much more present than future, right? So I would like to know, like, as a starting point, what are the reactions to those 4 approaches, and what would be your response? Do you want to start?
Sure, I'm happy to start. Hi, I'm Duncan. It seems to me that all 4 approaches are trying to address one issue, which is obviously the lack of space, but also trying to provide choice to people. And the thing that occurred to me is that the secret behind a good park is it's a park that people want to use. So I think the idea of being able to dial and deliver or Uber a park is a great idea, because it means that people can choose what they want in their park. I think the second thing, the notion of linking parks within, say, from Sham Shui Po down to Tsim Sha Tsui,
knowing that there are, again, this incredible city, this dynamic city that is Hong Kong, how do we find a happenstance connection with just a neighbor in a space? And this sense of slowing was also a way of engaging a social element into a small space. Third, I would say, is this idea of accumulation through smallness, that actually smallness can be a very big idea, equally within the proposals in each of the designs for a micro park, and that the accumulation could be spread out throughout the city to form a network, a sense of the Deliveroo Park that could also accumulate to make, occupy a space and take over a street even. But all of them, I think, had this sense of changing the landscape through a small insertion to do something extraordinary. So I loved them all. I learned a lot. I felt it was an amazing sense of creative responses to this idea of smallness.
But for example, I also thought that that instantaneous release, as Liz Diller was saying, actually, that the space of release was a nice way to start thinking about smallness, right? But that connects to publicness. I would say that is the moment in which we are thinking about what is a park, what is a public space, what is a purely space that it's made with a public purpose, right? And I think that there is a contradiction with some of the approaches in which there is a system that the Uberization of the project. Actually, there are like 2 of the 4 projects talk about. They mentioned Uber in the presentation. So I wonder what is the connection between what is public, the capacity of smallness with the public, for the public, right? So let's think about that.
Hi. I just also wanted to see if maybe not down there, but just to actually shape the conversation, because we also have obviously the kind of public cultural institutional participants, and we have some designers and academics, and also developers and landscape designers. And I'm just wondering from the perspective of seeing this as a encouragement to the definition of smallness per se in a city of Hong Kong, it doesn't seem, it actually is a global phenomenon. And in that sense, if we are to then think beyond what Uber is, because we had a discussion last night, there's a difference between shared economy versus like a shared movement, which has different aspects. So I would like to also distill this question of smallness from different perspectives of the invited participants. So if you respond to these incredible projects and ideas of smallness, could you also kindly share who you are, how you operate in your field, and then respond to these questions of smallness? That would help our discussion. Thank you. We don't know all of you, but we want to get to know all of you. Can I open it up then to Donald Choi? Sorry, I love putting you on the spot all the time.
I'm Donald. I trained as an architect, practiced as an architect for over 15 years, and then I switched my role to become a developer, working as a developer locally. I mean, there are a lot of good ideas, exciting ideas and approaches from the 4 teams. But I'm a bit disappointed as well as encouraged by some of the ideas. I'm disappointed in the sense that all of the teams, I think, are very pragmatic. I think the last team, SAM team, talked about affordable change. I think that's good. Okay, we kind of acknowledge the limitation that designers, architects have, and we are trying to do whatever we can within that limitation. So that is very realistic and practical. But I think the problem is that we tend to miss the macro overall picture. We are acknowledging that we cannot change the system. Within Hong Kong, we are having leftover space, and that's what, the only thing that we can do, mobile, being flexible, and so on. We do not have the courage of maybe Haussmann in Paris, let's make a major change to Sicily. How can we do that? And I think this is, as Marisa mentioned, probably it's not just Hong Kong. I think all over the world, we are facing the same contradiction and dilemma, especially in the West. I think the capitalism has taken over our life, and we acknowledge that we cannot change it. So, the inequality in wealth, there's nothing we can do. The unfairness in the society, again, there's nothing we can do, and so on. And that's where my disappointment comes in. I think if we acknowledge that, the existing system will stay, yes, it's a good thing that we use our own individual resources and effort to try to work within that system. But it is going to be a slow process. It is going to not really make a difference. And I hope that, especially in Hong Kong, we need to actually come out and point out the unfairness of our society. It's good to say that, Wong Kok, the smallness, the complexity, there's a lot of energy. But I doubt that is a good quality living environment. Why we should, kind of accept that kind of living environment? Why we cannot change? We have a lot of resources within our society, and the government definitely, I mean, they're having surplus budget, which is very unusual in any government. And that resources are not being put back into the society to improve our living environment, working environment. And we need to demand more, I think.
Sorry, can I comment on that? I don't think you're quite right. I think you're underestimating what we're trying to achieve here. Excuse me if I'm trying to interpret it, but we're not here about Haussmann. We're talking about small, incremental changes that could make a difference to an individual or a small group of people. If you're talking about a Haussmann redesign of the whole of Central, like they did in Paris, that's a different conversation. It really is. Because, if you want that sort of change, then come and talk to me at West Kowloon. That's what we're doing. But I think, and yep. Again, I think it's important that we focus on what we're trying to do. My understanding of what we're trying to do is to look at how small changes can make a big impact. Not the big changes that you're talking about, because quite frankly, yes, of course, government can invest whatever it is, $70 billion in West Kowloon and make a difference. We're building an 11-hectare park. We'll have 3 different spaces for the community, but that's not what we're talking about. That's a completely different conversation. So with all due respect, I think you should focus on what the purpose of the meeting is. Sorry.
Well, again, I think, I disagree with you respectfully. I think we are talking about smallness. It's like, I think one team mentioned earlier on about, the sharpness of a needle. It's where you use that smallness to make big changes. And I don't believe that, let's have 4 trucks, make a small park. That is going to make a big impact. I think we should concentrate. There's absolutely right, Duncan, that, we are talking about smallness is what we can do. But our effort, should not be concentrating on small changes.
It's interesting because I think in other workshops, which I find very interesting, this discussion, was also the challenge of the future of a micro park. However, it could be guideline driven, it could be policy driven, it could be a completely different model of stakeholder engagement to transform property, public, to different stakeholders, which then gives that empowerment process. So I'm getting excited, I feel some tension, and I want to keep going, because this is why Storefront and Design Trust are here. And I want to open up maybe Leslie Lau on my right, who is also in the, I would say, Leisure Cultural Services Department, could lend some of your comments. And then I want to cycle it back to Eric Yim, who keeps winking at me because he's dying to say something. And then Sarah Wong, I believe. I will keep working with Carlos to get everyone's voice in this. And welcome Ada. She just joined us. Ada Wong from Good Lab, Eric Schoenfrey from SQ and Hong Kong U. And I don't know if yes, okay. Leslie, please.
I'm Leslie, an art museum curator by professions. Have been working in the museums like the Hong Kong Museum of Art, Heritage Museum, but right now I'm working in the Art Promotion Office. In the past 2 decades, my office has been very much focused in some public art and community art projects. But in recent years, I seldom use the terms public art and community art. Because I think it's the terms for the last century. I prefer to use the terms like, urban regeneration, social innovations, recently, because I think these terms could have more powers to inspire the younger generations for the 21st century. I would like to focus on the 4 groups of young people. Interestingly, it seems two of the groups come up with very similar ideas. Mobile park, and I really like the ideas. I don't know how they come up with this idea, but it just recalled me, in Taiwan, there's some street performers. They used to just travel from one village to another village in a large truck. And then when they perform, they just open up the truck, and then the truck will become a stage for the performance. The idea is, I just think, and another thing is, I also think about some very local tradition culture in our urban area, in our villages. Maybe some of them have tried Pun Choi. Yes, Pun Choi is a very big bowl of dish in village when for some special festivals, occasions, the village people will just have their big banquets outside the squares of their village, outdoor space, and they just invite the serf and make it in situ, and then the people enjoy this kind of open public space just turned to a large kitchen banquet. These ideas, I think, maybe you can use this, truck, mobile park using a truck, and then you can just use a truck ideas to turn it to truck X, truck park, truck anything, truck kitchen. I think this is.
And Hong Kong just started this food truck. Yeah, so maybe that's
a
way to
maybe
hack.
Truck just put a X, anything.
Interesting. Okay.
And then, but personally, I like the idea of the first group, reeling, because I don't know if you have ever heard about one of our good friends, also a social advocate, Vincent Wingson. Recently, he criticized about the rulings in Hong Kong. If you are Hong Kong people, I think you will notice. In the city of Hong Kong, on one hand, we are talking, we are very small, or we are very crowded, we are lack of space. But on the other hand, we also have something a bit too much, too many, just like those rulings. For example, if you go to our parks and gardens for a planter of this size, sometimes you will see they are circled over more than one or two layers of railings. Sarah is a landscape architect. Where is Sarah? Yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah. Yes.
Or this is really the things that even though professionals raise out their concern and it didn't really happen to be enhanced because of like this is the government's standard way of doing it.
Yeah, it just anyway, there's some professionals just feeling very annoying about these layers of railings. But I like the idea of the first group because they just turn something negative from a positive way of thinking to make it, well, maybe we can have something interesting for these railings. Okay, that's my feelings of this book.
Eric?
Yeah. Eric, again, also trained as an architect, but also involved in business, and I do a little bit of teaching in PolyU as well. Like to respond to the conversation just now. Whether we do big thing or small thing, whether it's by the government initiative or developers, I think we can think about cooperating with developers. A lot of developers actually now giving up the kind of ground floor space to the public, and all these park, mini park, micro park, especially suggested by the second team and the fourth team. It's kind of have these kind of mobile parks somewhere. Can we have this park actually on the sky, on the rooftop, kind of, in terms of policy level, work with developers? And this, we still can have this kind of idea of linking up. Linking up spaces in Hong Kong is nothing uncommon. We have these kind of overhead bridges in Central, linking up a lot of space and actually make the first floor space very usable. In fact, that means we actually created another level, another layer of ground floor space. So if we can, think, really out of the box, this could be possibility that we actually link up all this sky park. And then that means we don't actually need to occupy space on ground floor, whether it's a skip or whether it's a truck. So I think this is not undoable, but obviously, now it's difficult. But I think in terms of with some kind of policy support, with some kind of incentive to developers, it is doable. I think we could think about that.
Sure. I think there are some local developers, am I allowed to say, who's hovering somewhere behind me, who's also developing a project called Sky Park, which is also a new incentivization of reclaiming public space in a different way. So I think I'm hopeful, I'm an optimist. I think there are a lot of really wonderful things happening in Hong Kong and for our city. I think the issue is how to build that conversation, which is why we're here today. Cole, maybe quickly for you, and then, do you want to say anything? Anyone?
All right, I'm Edwin. I work for a developer in Hong Kong. We recently finished a park on the top of a residential building that for the communal use of everyone in the building. The people like it, so we encourage us that we can do more for the community when we do our developments. Respond to the presentations. I think all the young tenants are excellent and give us so much inspiration, real inspiration, I have to say, real inspiration. Because they are fresh mind rather than us. We have so much already deception. Small, I think a few things. I think small is not a restriction. If we add smart into small, it can be very good. I drive a classic Mini every day. It's a very, very small car, but I feel very comfortable in the car. It's good enough for my family, 4 people. Even my daughter always complains. It is hot, but the space is good. So I think small, it can be beautiful. That's true. Another thing is small can be big. I think respond to Donald. I think no one would know what a beacon could be today. From Uber, a few cars start, and it can be one of the most biggest, transport provider. Airbnb, it starts from a few people, and then it can be so big now. It is the biggest hotel operator today in the world. So small can be big. That's what I respond, and what I feel, or everyone I think will share the same feeling is all the excellent ideas, we want it to be realized. How we can do it, I think that is what I'm always in my mind. I think this can be our next step. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. So execution, back to theory and academia.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about execution.
Okay.
That's not my forte. I teach history and theory at HKU. My name's Cole, for those of you who don't know me. I wanted to thank all the students. I really enjoyed the presentations, and thanks to Design Trust and Storefront for including me. I wanted to talk briefly and give just a bit of constructive feedback to each of the projects and what I found most compelling about them. Particularly, I think, projects 1 and 3. And what I found so attractive and intriguing about them was the fact that they were rethinking the park through smallness. They were using smallness to interrogate what a park is, how it's defined. In the first group, I think moving forward, what could be really exciting is to take the railing and think of it as an object, and how an object becomes a park. In the third team, too, the park was an effect, it seemed. The idea of a park was more of an atmosphere that's generated. Groups 2 and 4, also exciting, but both of you made certain presumptions about what a park was. You laid down the green carpet. One of you had sort of an old log and a bench. So there was a kind of adherence to the typical representations of what we understand a park to be. You just kind of shrunk it. And so it would be interesting to rethink the park, not necessarily as a physical space, but as something else. That might have additional generative possibilities moving forward. And in terms of how I might define smallness and how I understood smallness and the sort of catalytic qualities of it in the projects, again, in the first group, smallness and the focus on the railing might open up all kinds of interesting possibilities about craft and precision and delicacy. These are mass-produced railings that don't have to be mass-produced. Similarly, in the third group, smallness was about intimacy, right? The personal experience, the personal emotive qualities that are generated through a park. And so, again, teams 2 and 4, smallness was understood in terms of volume or in terms of space. So maybe moving forward, rethinking smallness and challenging it to then interrogate the park itself might be useful.
I think actually that's an amazing comment, right? Because it's true that the different approaches to smallness usually are connected to the physicality, or the physical values of what an object is. No, so it's connected to the idea of how small is an object. But I was wondering, for example, the smallness of the pollution that the construction of the park might produce, or the waste that park is producing, or the labor that entails, right? Because, and I think that's an interesting approach. It's like how the different levels of what building today entails, not only is the physicality of it, is an entire system that is behind it. No? So I would like to also bring that to the table. I wanted to pass the mic to Ethel to see what somebody from Barcelona think about micro.
Well, hello, I'm Ethel Barahona from Barcelona, as Carlos said. I'm a critic and researcher, have a publishing house, so part of our research in the past years has been also focused on this spatial acupuncture, tactical urbanism, and so on. So I found very interesting that for the group presentations, I found a common link that I want to remark because it's super strong, and it's the recall or reenactment of the infraordinary, like George Perec used to say. I think that it's a massive challenge in a city like this, that it's in constant movement, so full of many stimulus, to look at the infraordinary. How do we look to the details? How do we question every single piece of land, signals, gestures of the people, smells? I think it's a very interesting challenge that the groups are posing in front of us. And going from that challenge, I think I have perhaps a critique or a remark that is not for the groups, but for all of us as a practice, that here in Hong Kong, it's more evident than in other cities that we live in a world full of objects. And mostly all of the projects are designing more objects. So I want to put the challenge on the table to all of us, the critics, the students, the professors, the mentors, to open up a little bit the way we think in architecture and design, also to design processes or to empower the people to use the microspace, the small spaces. We can design, I don't know, toolkits, protocols. Design includes so many things, and I think this studio has already the multidisciplinary approach. There are writers, there are graphic designers, so I think it will be very interesting if, for example, in the railing group, they design a manual to hack all the railings instead of the object, and so on. So this is some of the challenges I want to put on the table to see if we can evolve from the object to empower people to use all these small spaces and the relationships that emerge from the infraordinary.
Oh, right.
Sorry, Eric, did we go over you? We did. No. So sorry, Eric.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I try to create more tension. I mean, I try to really look at all the consequence right now from a China perspective. Even though I'm not really a Chinese, like a real China, but I'm I'm a Hong Konger.
You're a Hong Konger.
I've been working in China for the last 8 years. I was trained as a social anthropologist and urban designer. And I've been working for development banks and family offices in China, do due diligence of their impact projects. So basically, we set up impact metrics to understand different types of social enterprises at different stages, from early stage to all the way to IPO. So there's actually a lot of ideas actually has been emerged in the last 10 years, 5 years in China about all this kind of social innovation. How can that become executable? So I think I really want to address the issues about it is actually a little bit disappointing to me that all 4 projects only addressing one thing. And I'm personally not very liking the idea about, this is a Uber of something. Like, this is fundamentally problematic because we are applying a theory which might work somewhere else in a very, very specific situation, and we don't know that it's working or not. So I would really want to say this is a Hong Kong version of something, instead of this is an Uber of park. I think this is actually the mindset I think a lot of people need to really change, because he's from Shenzhen. 5 minutes ago, he was asking me, can Mobike work in Hong Kong? I hope that you guys know Mobike, right? It's this biggest bike sharing business in China. They own every single bike. It's a really high quality bike, 2,000 RMB per bike. And then you can share it in the city, and then park it anywhere, you take it anywhere, right? But that business not able to get in Hong Kong just because the cost to hack into the policy and system, institutional system in Hong Kong is too high. It's not impossible, it's just too high, so they cannot hack in. So they need to look for another solutions to get into such kind of idea in Hong Kong. So you want to create a Mobike in Hong Kong, it's not going to work. So better create your own things in Hong Kong. And I think another point I think I want to address, the point from you is really, I think there's a
I think
lacking.
Duncan said he's doing it for West Campus.
Of course, of course. I mean, we can talk about that. Yes, yes. Right. And we can zooming out a little bit to really understand like the more holistic picture. I think there's a lot of discussion about smallness, but I think there's a lacking discussion about bigness for all the groups. And I think, you're actually looking at the contemporary, theories about all these two ideas. It's not really a black and white thing. Like when Ren Koolhaas talk about bigness, it's not about a monolithic, gigantic dinosaur. It's about complexities and holism as well. I think right now, to me, we are talking about avant-gardism and the idea about zeitgeist, the spirit of time. Like, it's really about like, if there's a genius and think that he can change the world, and he actually did it, and creating this really genius, holistic ecosystem that changing the world. Or there is some methodologies to actually empowering people to do a little bit of things they may not even know what that is, and eventually the collective energy become a movement. I think it's such kind of more social and behavioral, differences instead of the quality or the quantity of the space. And I think, it's really a lacking of, like, I just don't know how to judge this project, anymore. Like, what is the success criteria for this? Of course, we can say the scalable is this, is that, right? But at the end of the day, I think the objective of being small is to do something. Like, being small make my business big because it's a long-tail business. Being small can make a big power so that I can act against the government. I think there's always something behind the idea about smallness instead of smallness being the goal, because I think, it's really hard for us to go beyond that. I think my last point is more about, it's a little bit being too trendy to me about all this idea. It's like, 10 years ago when we look at students' work in the university, we can start to understand who's the fans, like what kind of fans of this student. Like, he likes Ren Koolhaas, he likes Lakabucha. I think we can start to understand that kind of trends, right? And today, it seems to me there's the same thing. There's a certain trends behind this. And I think, instead of really applying theories and try to explain a specific situation, I think there's a lacking of the bottom up, which is like how the specific situation generate your own theory and start to criticize Uber or criticize Mobike or things like that. I think there's a lacking of such kind of criticalities in the whole discourse of the work. Understand it's like 1/3 of the whole developments maybe, but there's like a lot of time that you guys can spend to actually really looking for the specificity of it. And I think one recommendation for me is really, really take smallness as a methodology, because the entrepreneurs so far generally are smarter than designers dealing with smallness, because they know how to execute and hack into the situations. Maybe it's greedy, maybe because it's greedy, maybe because it's just opportunistic, maybe because this and that. But I think, what designer can add is really about the visions and the positive energy, actually taking use of the smallness and generating the empowerments. Like, what is the affordability of it? Like, why smallness there? Is that really empowering the rich people or the poor people? Who is the more, appropriate audience for your smallness project to be? Just very, very a minor point. I think there's a difference between matching a girl to the guy, matching a guy to the girl, and create a platform to match the guy and girl. I think, for example, like that project, I think if you actually start to think about that, are you a platform? Like, Uber is actually not a taxi company. It's only a data company. They never own any single taxi, right? But if I'm a taxi company, I sell my taxi. There's a very, very different way that you can actually develop your thing. Maybe it's not an app, it's just a Facebook group. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think it's also contextual, and which is why we're here today to unpack these questions. But I do agree that smallness is a methodology that the teams have been approaching and actually questioning with their mentors this process on demographics, who the audience is, and setting them their own briefs. So we're not restricting them with a series of regulatory formats. This is a extracurricular future studio ideas investment where we're actually thinking about postulating these questions. So I think criticism is wonderful. It makes it productive. But again, we are a design studio, so taking the skill sets of how design can actually impact kind of within this brief of what a future micropark is something I think we're going to shape the discussion. And maybe from a designer's viewpoint, JJ.
So it's really interesting. I mean, I'm a designer, and I choose to live in Hong Kong, and I've lived here for 12 years. I moved here from New York, and I operate in Southeast Asia, so I do projects in Bangkok and Manila as well, but I choose to live here. But it's really interesting, and you know, I said that because, I mean, I got your brief, Marissa, and I read the brief over and over again, and I'm like, why is the brief about smallness? I mean, it seems like we are not being optimistic about bigness, so we are making do with the smallness. But you know, listening to all the critics here today, and of course all of the issues underpinned by the students. Not students. Well, we're all students. We're all students of life. But by the young designers. At first I was going to say that smallness, well, you have issues of smallness and design globally, but this is actually a very specific Hong Kong issue, and the attitude towards the 4 research solutions is specifically a Hong Kong attitude. I don't really know if it's potentially a tension-filled subject matter, but because it seems like, you know, because you have to have a scientific or pragmatic approach to it, it seems like you can't really tell from the designers whether it's they're being optimistic about it or whether they're being pessimistic about it. Well, definitely issues of inequality has been brought up, and issues about making do with whatever we've got has been brought up, but there's no sense of whether people are mad or angry or whatever. And essentially, if making do is what Hong Kong people have left in this environment, one can think that perhaps manipulations of smallness could actually be a weapon, or it could actually be the effect is bigness if everybody has a little weapon or a little needle or a little tool. So I would challenge the designers, same with what Cole was thinking, and not just take a platform and roll a green rug and call it a park, but perhaps really look at ways in which people can converge and become a community. There are niche communities everywhere, and some people don't even have to meet. They just form a Facebook group. But yes, you can meet, and there are actually alleyways, there are actually existing microparks in Sheung Wan that, if you really think about smallness and what kind of details could be done in the urbanscape that we already have, that can actually make big changes that would actually be challenging to whatever authority, whatever situation keeps things very small, and add meaningful, add value to life.
Thank you. Sarah is dying to say something.
Sorry. I think it's really exciting because I think I can see the discussion is getting very keen. Everyone are keen to talk something, and it's actually a good sign. Well, I introduce myself a little bit. I am Sarah Wong. I was trained in a dual background. I think I have a lot of people notice that. I was trained as an artist, and I also trained as a landscape architect. And so I actually recently, I think I'm really happy with my background because that allows me to think constantly. It could be a great contradiction between the mindset as an artist and or doing a landscape work. But it also allowed me to shift back and forth quickly between conceptual thinking mind and also a very rational, logical. No, I don't mean artists are not logical, but but you need to give a lot of justification during your practice. And I practiced as a landscape designer and artist for many years. And recently, I am teaching in Hong Kong DI. I teach in landscape architecture in Hong Kong DI. So I would say that I've been seeing a lot of students or graduates, new designers work. And for the past years, I think every year, if I go through all the graduation shows, I would discover at least 3 or 4 works which are dealt with roof garden in Hong Kong, a network of roof garden in Hong Kong, public park in Hong Kong, a small, neighborhood park in Hong Kong, and seeing it as a network to enhance the living environment. A lot of this kind of work appears. And I see this is probably really the real interest of the new generation. It's a generation thing. Yeah, and this is their concern. And the other thing is I would like to rethink about the topic. Yeah. If we rethink about the topic, I think it's really relevant to Hong Kong, although a lot of people say that smallness has been discussed for many years. But I think if there would be some innovative thought generated in response to the urgency of small living environment, small urban fabric, or highly congested and intense urban fabric, I believe that must be from Hong Kong, because this is the place where we live, and this is I would say that is the urgency we have here. And well, on the other hand, I think if I look at the students' work, and I found this interesting, the other thing I found interesting is, well, a lot of them are with architecture background, product design background. The interesting thing is, all 4 projects seems to address the open space, the outdoor space instead of the indoor space, and I think that is something that we should look into and discuss about. It is something that really burning our new designers. It is the issue that they're really feeling something they really burning question for them. And with that, I really do like all the 4 projects. Yeah. But I think I would like to maybe suggest some more things for you to consider. I think that would be helpful. Which is also something JJ has also mentioned. It's about when we are talking about outdoor space, how could we not talk about the context about it? It is about the people who are using it, why they're using it, how to make them enjoyable with the parks and you're creating. And the other thing is about the context, is about the location of it. And I think that is one of the most important thing even, particularly when we are talking about public park in a city context, as congested as Hong Kong. I've been doing a study with my students on an interesting type of space in Hong Kong. We call it sitting out area. And if you look at the outline zoning plan in Hong Kong for outdoor space, we have public open space in Hong Kong, but we also have one interesting topic which is called sitting out area. How to define it? No one can define it. Actually, even the government, they don't really define it.
Actually, we have a Design Trust research grantee who's analyzing these SOAs. They're also called shit pits, xi hang, right? But there's 2,000 of them in Hong Kong that is actually generated out of the landslide issues and topography. Therefore, it gave rise to these really incredibly beautiful sitting out areas.
Yes.
And I think some teams are thinking about how they could potentially utilize these. But sorry to jump in. But I'm just saying that there are a lot of
you're doing that too.
Yeah, we had a researcher come share with the team.
We found we can share a lot more on that. It's interesting. It's typically the place where when the government was planning the city, they don't know what to do with that. Or this is something that they demolish something and then they have no urgent plan for what to do with that. And they are usually odd shapes, triangular, a little bit, don't know what to do at the corner of the roadside. And so they identify a sitting out area. So they have no particular use, they have no particular program to be into it, to be put into it. And it's usually being designed in a really not user-friendly way, not really trying to engage the locals, the local communities. And when I'm looking at that acupuncture project, I was like, oh, if you go and study the serious sitting out area starting from Sham Shui Po all the way down to Yau Ma Tei, you'll find interesting mapping of spaces in this area. It's just like acupuncture. It's all this area. If you do a mapping over there, you find it's such an interesting distribution of outdoor space. And I believe that, like, if we instead of making up a space, put a park there, I think that we could do a lot more by getting to know the existing network and how can we make use of that, and to make it even a more like with a more synergy among them.
I'm hoping this afternoon when we look closer at manifesto and the design schematics, we can think about this question. But I know we're actually tight on time, but if you don't,
just one more thing. Okay. When I'm talking about network, I'm talking about smallest. How can we make smallest become important is by collective of different small elements. And when we are talking about a network of city park, we're not just talking about a series of networks that people can enjoy it and they provide amenity facilities. We're also talking about, this is like some student actually mentioned about the definition of a park. It is a natural or semi-natural environment, which it will encourage a microsystem to be happen there. It will encourage a green infrastructure to be happen in the city that is not being enjoyed by human only. It's also enjoyed by insects, birds, like city animals like stray cats. And this is a thing to encourage a lively system inside the city. So I do like to see, the students see more, our young designer, to see more like beyond as just like outdoor individual small parks. Yeah, but also that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's great. Ada, maybe Ada can share a little bit from your... And if you haven't spoken, guest critics, please just wave to me if you're dying to say something. And Patrick's, yes. Ada. Yeah.
Ada Wong. I'm not a designer. I'm a lawyer. I'm a cultural advocate. I'm a social entrepreneur. I'm an innovator. But, not a designer. I would actually like to go back to Donald's first remarks about system, about changing the system. So I've jotted down a number of points about what's actually wrong about the system of public spaces and parks in Hong Kong. I think there are probably three big areas. The first is the process is not a very empowering process. If we want to build a park for a certain neighborhood, for a certain community, surely the community might not have a sufficient chance to tell the designers what they want and how they want to congregate, how they want their public space to be. So this participatory process is, more often than not, quite missing in Hong Kong. And the second point is that more and more now, because of the density of Hong Kong, in particular in the urban areas, the parks are not at grade. They're not at level. So you will have a park or a POS on the 8th floor of a podium. Some we call POS-PD, and that is in a private development. On top of elements, you will have some spaces that are for the public and some that are not for public, but actually nobody would know where the delineation is. So it's pseudo, I would say these are pseudo parks and spaces, and they're actually not used by anybody meaningfully. The third, I would say, is about how parks are operated. There's too much managerialism. There are too many rules and regulations. There are too many no's in front of a park. The last time I counted, there were 22. So no singing, no dancing, no skateboarding, no soccer playing. And then you have these benches in the parks where they are theater style, right? So with theater style and not like this, you don't actually see the person next to you, which might be okay. but then it is not conducive to conversations and dialogues and making friends. So, and then, you know, I was suddenly reminded of this photo that a friend sent me of the pier of Ping Chau. I don't know whether some of you have been to Ping Chau. There are all these yellow chairs that somebody put there. And immediately and organically, these old people who have nothing to do, you know, started to put these chairs in circles. And then they started to talk to each other, and it has been their meeting point and congregation point every single day. And so that is a park, and that is a micro park, and that is a park that is meaningful. So going back to micro parks and small being beautiful and meaningful, I do agree, because smallness is our fate in Hong Kong. But how do we make smallness more meaningful? I think we have to look at the process. It must be in a more empowering process. You must get rid of all that managerialism. And I think that we really need to think a bit more about allowing people to actually test out ideas and think about ways they would want to use the space, and not how a designer would like to fix up the space. I was late, so I haven't heard the 4 presentations, but I have heard the prototype 1.0. So I do appreciate their efforts very much, and I think that they can now go from there to, you know, and leap forward. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ada. Maybe Eric and then Patrick, our last 2 guest critics. James, do you want to say anything, or you want to be silent? You do? Cool, okay.
Just a quick remark. I'm Eric Schuldenfrei. I'm coming from Hong Kong U. I teach with Cole in the Faculty of Architecture. And just thinking about also opportunities. I mean, the idea of smallness, coming back to JJ's comment, the thing that smallness does allow is experimentation, because you're not risking so much with each test. And just the idea that the major difference that I find with parks in Hong Kong versus my experience of parks elsewhere is that as I enter a park in Hong Kong, I can close my eyes and imagine what's in front of me, because I've already seen it 200,000 times on every other park in Hong Kong. It's the same thing that I was told when I asked why every government building is either gray or blue. I was told it was the excess paint that they had stored up, and that they didn't want to make, they wanted to make use of that paint. It was very noble to make use of all that paint, but that's why there's only 2 colors. Because I don't know if it's true or not. It might be completely false. But I was thinking about that in terms of the parks. The materials all seem the same. There seems to be no experimentation. There seems to be no freedom to deviate from what's been tried and true. Obviously, there's exceptions to that, but not great exceptions. You don't walk into a park and experience something completely different from one park to the next. And in other cultures, there is this idea that every park becomes a competition among either architects or landscape architects, and everyone's competing to be able to do and have new ideas for that park. And I think this idea of competition is actually quite vital, especially if we're talking about something small. Isn't small necessarily to be replicated? Again, not like the Uber model or other models where you're just trying to replicate or grow in scale. But smallness is this idea of constant experimentation, risk-taking, and if it fails, the acceptance of a failure. If something doesn't quite work out, the acceptance that that is completely fine and part of the process as well. There's something about smallness that I love, is that it allows, unlike something very large, and you're spending $70 billion or however billion dollars you're spending, you can't really risk too much, because you really need to make sure, you can still make risks, but you have to make sure that it works. at something at a small scale.
Duncan, that means please take more risks.
No, there's already a lot of risks. I already know some of these risks that are taken every day.
Yeah, I do know that.
Maybe we need less risk. Yeah, maybe less risk for something at that scale. But there should be opportunity for risk. And I think this idea of how you implement smallness and how you implement allowing different creative minds to have different opinions for different audiences. I'd love a park aimed at 2-year-olds. I know there are pieces of every park aimed at 2 to 5-year-olds or 5 to 8-year-olds. But I'd like to have a park only for 2-year-olds that's completely different from the standard bought equipment for the 2-year-olds. I don't want any bought equipment. I would rather it be imagined by fresh from someone else's minds. And I think every project, I mean, the things that I love in Hong Kong are when someone has made a decision to take over their public space in a unique way. And that happens at the sort of the street level. But I think we should allow other opportunities for that as well. So.
Thank you, Eric.
Sorry,
Patrick.
I've got to respond. I apologize. Both to Ada and to the last couple of points from Eric. First, I think Ada's absolutely right. We do need more engagement of local people. It's something we're trying to do. I think she's absolutely right that we've got to have much, much less regulation. And we're trying to do that within our park. We had to go through a process of getting bylaws enacted. And we were criticized for not having more regulations within the bylaws. But philosophically, you're right. We want them to be places for them, for people to use. So we don't have any benches. We only have chairs like this. And people cause the congregation. On the second point of competition, it is difficult in a bigger institutional framework that I'm working in. But we are trying. We are having a design competition at the moment for a pavilion. And it's not a big space. It's contextually very similar to what we're talking about. But we want to get innovative ideas. We want to get young people, and we're deliberately targeting young people. They have to be, within 10 years of graduation, to have the ideas. More importantly, we're going to implement them. Because, the thing that worries me a little bit about this is there are some great ideas, but how are they taken forward? And I would hope, because we've got space coming out of our ears, which we can't use for various reasons, if you can fund it, we'll find space for you. It's possible to do these things. Yeah, seriously. If you guys fund it, we'll put it on the site. That's what, I want it to be, I want these things to be practical, we were talking earlier, Sahanya's team has put together M+ Rover, which is very similar to the second and fourth idea, which is to take a temporary facility, put it on a container, and take it out. It's an artist studio at the moment. It can be anything. Again, it's not about the big institutional framework, the M+ museum of whatever it is, 65,000 square meters. This is a 20-foot container, but it can have as much impact. And it comes back to the point about small. You can have a big change by having small incremental steps. There you go.
Thank you, Duncan. Patrick.
Maybe just, I guess, two brief points about this. I think the smallness topic is actually very interesting relative. I guess if you look at it from the point of view of ethics, right, it is precisely because of the compactness of smallness that we could enjoy our country parks, the 70% of the kind of undisturbed territories. So from that perspective, it is quite meaningful. Right? So I guess from our perspective from Hong Kong, this is actually a kind of opportunity rather than a kind of a residual effect. Just a few, I guess, general comments about the project. Very interesting kind of ideas on the object itself. So I just wonder if there would be more attention be paid on, say, the effect of the object that it has on the public realm. Right? So perhaps different scenarios could be considered and better define how these objects could begin to affect the particular localities of the place. So it's, I guess, critical to come up with terms of evaluations for evaluating whether this particular object achieves certain kind of impact or effect or not, in order to move forward to the next stage. Yeah.
That will be the afternoon, I hope.
So, thank you so much. I think that we need to start wrapping up. As a yep.
Sorry, James.
Oh, yeah,
James,
let's do the last one.
The last voice of any other guest critics? No. Okay, James. Here. Thanks. Optimistic note, please.
I'll keep my comments small. Congratulations to all the mentees. I think all the ideas are great. The ones that resonate with me are the ones that look at what Hong Kong already has and how they can be better used or utilized. We at Monocle like to we applaud cities that look at what they've already got and how they can be used in a better way. What I would say is that each of the groups need to perhaps take a step back, because I think they've started from the assumption that Hong Kong doesn't have any micro parks. And it's something that we've said, I guess, on this side, is that there are plenty of micro parks around Hong Kong, and how do we use those better? I've got a very small office in Wan Chai, and I can think of 3 micro parks within 50 meters of my office. Same for my very small house in Kowloon. They're already there, but do I use them? I don't think I ever have. Why? Because they're pretty grim, they're pretty concrete. So it's a question of looking at what Hong Kong already has and seeing how they can be, whether it's greening or just the app on the back, actually. If they could just be collated and a clever app could be created to show where these places are, I think that would be a very easy, very simple, and very achievable solution. So that's my bit.
Thank you. As a way of wrapping up, I would like to do almost like a mix of certain amazing sentences that we have had during the conversation, and the sentences are: it's a question of looking at what Hong Kong has. Smallness is Hong Kong's fate. Smallness allows for risk. Should be opportunity for risk. We need to construct forms in which we eliminate the no's, and we need to find tools for implementation. I think that was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much to everybody. We're going to have a break, and we're going to come back the Manifesto series on a scale at what time?
We're going to start at 2 o'clock, is that right? 2:45? No, wait, 2:30. If we're 2:30. So we have a lunch break for our guests and designers. Before we conclude also, I just want to thank Mimi Brown, the director of Spring Workshop, who's sitting kindly in the corner, for hosting us and being our partner. And I have to say, in terms of smallness, Mimi has made huge impact with her nonprofit organization here at Spring Workshop. And sadly, it's dissolving on the 5th-year term. So please enjoy the space. This is the last few months of Spring Workshop. And I invite you to chat with her and empower her to change her mind to continue. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for the wonderful Design Trust team, Ralph and Muilo, Jeannie, Chong, Mavis, Laura, and Jeff, and AJ, everyone who's here today. Without
and
you
Max
guys.
also from
and Max
Storefront.
from Storefront.
Tweeting
everyone,
like crazy right now.
Yeah, enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you.